Good morning and welcome to another edition of Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Ferris and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll continue now where we left off yesterday in the book The Global Vatican by former U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See, Francis Rooney. We're talking about now the Constitution of the United States, which is interpreted by the Supreme Court of the United States. That's their job, to interpret the Constitution. And we are aware that for the first time in U.S. history that I'm aware of, there's not one single Protestant on the Supreme Court. It is comprised of a 60% majority. A supermajority of the Supreme Court are devout Roman Catholics. Knights of, Opus Dei members. And certainly they will interpret our Constitution from a Roman Catholic point of view. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. The author continues in his discussion about the Founding Fathers, and we talked about that yesterday. Who were the Founding Fathers? They were Freemasons, Luciferians, and they were teamed up with Papists, Jesuit-trained Papists, the Carroll family, John, Charles, and Carroll of Carrollton, and Daniel Carroll. The Jesuit priest John Carroll was celebrated as the first Roman Catholic Archbishop of this country in 2008 when Pope Benedict came and literally claimed ownership of the United States of America as the conquering victor of this country. Now he says, what were the founders telling us about church and state in the First Amendment? Okay, we're going to talk about the First Amendment. What is the First Amendment? Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion, nor interfere with the free exercise thereof. Now, before I begin any of my comments this morning, let me tell you what freedom is to the Roman Catholic Church. From the very foundation of the Roman Catholic Church, which Rome says is that Peter was the first pope. He said, remember, Jesus said, whom do you say that I am? And Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, upon this rock will I build my church. Now, Rome would have you believe that Peter is the rock. But we know from the Bible that Jesus is the rock and foundation of the church, and we are all built upon that foundation. But from the very get-go, the very beginning of the Roman Catholic Church, the very beginning of Roman Catholic teaching is the fact, they say, false and antichrist as it is, that Peter is the rock and foundation of the church, and that Peter was the first pope, and that every pope in succession after him sit in his seat as the vicar or the replacement of Christ on earth. Now, never mind that Jesus didn't say that anybody would replace him except the Comforter. He said, I must go away, for if I go not away, the Comforter will not come. And if the Comforter come, he will teach you all things. Now, he wasn't speaking of Peter, nor was he speaking of Peter's successor, the Pope. He was speaking of the Holy Spirit. So it is the papacy that assumes the position, the power to teach that the Holy Spirit was sent to give us. That makes the papacy, from its very foundation, a blasphemer of the Holy Ghost. But Rome believes that freedom of religion, the free exercise of Roman Catholicism, should be that the Roman Catholic Church, or rather the papacy, should govern over the kings of the earth, the governments of the world. All right, if the papacy is the governor of the kings of the world, then under the freedom of exercise clause, then we just have to know that their intent of their freedom to exercise their religion mandates that they control the government. The free exercise of Roman Catholicism is to subjugate the governments of the world to serve the Pope. Okay? Roman Catholics are free to practice their religion in this country without hindrance from the government. That means the government must yield to the authority of the papacy, because that's the free exercise of Roman Catholicism. Okay? So if Roman Catholicism is free to exercise its religion, then the government must establish Roman Catholicism as the religion of the country. And that's what it has done. That's what this book enumerates and proves from a Roman Catholic authority. Now listen to what he says. What were the Founding Fathers telling us about church and state in the First Amendment? Do you need anybody to tell you what the Founding Fathers were trying to teach us in the First Amendment? Congress shall make no law establishing religion. Well, what if the president does? You see, Rome is going to find a loophole. Rome is going to stack the deck at the Supreme Court until it's interpreted the way Rome wants it interpreted. Because Rome has a baseline mandate to govern over the kings of the earth. Freedom to exercise Roman Catholicism means that Romanism is free to control the government and establish Roman Catholicism as the religion of the nation. He says, as Jim Towie explained at our conference on religious freedom in 2007, the religion clause of the First Amendment is fundamental to the whole idea of the United States. If we focus, listen carefully, if we focus exclusively on the Establishment Clause, I just quoted it to you, Congress shall make no law establishing religion. But if we focus exclusively on that alone, we fail to appreciate the second part, says this Roman Catholic author. And what is the second part? And shall not interfere with the free exercise thereof. Because the free exercise of Roman Catholicism means that government must establish Roman Catholicism as the religion. Now that's the position this Roman Catholic author is taking. This is the position, ultimately, that the Roman Catholics on the Supreme Court are going to take. The free exercise of religion includes Roman Catholicism. It is free in this country, unfettered by the government, untouchable by the government. And that simply means that Roman Catholicism is free to dominate and to make this country Roman Catholic. That's the whole gist of what this author is telling us. If we focus exclusively on the Establishment Clause, we fail to appreciate the second part, the Free Exercise Clause, which means we fail to grasp the full meaning of the amendment. In other words, you don't understand the First Amendment at all unless you understand that it includes the Free Exercise Clause. You acknowledge the Roman Catholic Pontiff's freedom to exercise his religion, which means to subjugate the government. You see, the author is subtly taking your emphasis away from the non-establishment clause and putting it on the free exercise clause. Okay, and we're led to believe that the free exercise clause is being observed because of all the Roman Catholics coming in from the southern border and also all the Hindus. I mean, what motel can you go to that isn't run by an Indian? somebody from India. And the free immigration of Muslims into this country. I tell you, they're working on all angles. Now, we're going to have to respect the Hindus' wishes. We're going to have to respect the Muslim wishes. And we're also going to have to respect Rome's wishes. And that is to get control of the government. You don't have to be Roman Catholic as long as you obey Roman Catholic canon law. That's Rome's strategy. Free exercise of religion. Free exercise for Protestants. Free exercise for Baptists. Free exercise for Lutherans. All the sects are free to exercise their religion. So are the Muslims. So are the Buddhists. So are the Hindus. But the government is going to be Roman Catholic. That's Rome's attitude. That's this author's attitude. And if you don't understand the free exercise clause and what it really means for Romanism, you don't understand that Constitution. You don't understand that amendment. That's what this author's telling you. You fail to grasp the full meaning of the amendment. If you focus exclusively on the establishment clause, I'll call it the non-establishment clause, and you don't focus on the free exercise clause. You have to focus on the free exercise clause. That's what he's telling you. Forget the non-establishment clause. You have to focus on the free exercise clause. Because the free exercise clause guarantees that the Roman Catholic Church can legally take over the government. And then thereby establish Roman Catholicism as a state religion, just like it is in all other Roman Catholic countries, by concordat, by contractual agreement. All right? If you don't focus on the free exercise clause, if you focus exclusively on the non-establishment clause, you don't understand the First Amendment. That's what this Roman Catholic's teaching you. You ought to know his strategy. You ought to be able to comprehend his strategy now. If you focus on the free exercise clause, you've opened up the door for Roman Catholicism, and that's what he wants you to do. This is Jesuit casuistry, Jesuit sophistry. There is ulterior meaning in these words. You can listen to them and interpret them one way in your mind, but you completely miss their thrust. And that's intended. It's no wonder they deceive the whole world. They've mastered the art of lying under the pretense of telling the truth. This is how they excuse themselves from outwardly lying. They're telling you the truth. You just don't understand the meaning of the words. He says the primary intent of the religion clause of the First Amendment was not to limit religion's influence on government. Did you hear what he said? The primary intent of the religion clause in the First Amendment was not to limit religion, that is, Roman Catholicism's influence on the government. It was to limit the government's interference in religion. Now you get it, don't you? There it is, right there. No government can... The First Amendment was not to limit the Pope's control over the government. It was to limit the government's control over the Pope. It's wide open now. Surely you can understand what this author's literally telling you. He's not telling you anything that is contradicts anything that has happened in history. The Pope has always claimed, as the vicar and the replacement of Christ, who sits in the chair of Peter, the rock and foundation of the church, that he has the right, as vicar of Christ, as the Pope, to govern the government. And the government may not interfere with the Pope. Everything he said so far is consistent with historic Roman Catholicism. He's confirming with his own mouth what I have suggested for years and years on Inquisition Update. He says the freedom to worship according to one's conscience. What is the conscience of a Roman Catholic? To obtain the highest offices of our government, to pass laws consistent with Roman Catholic canon law, to appoint other Roman Catholics to higher and higher political office, so that eventually the government becomes Roman Catholic. That is the conscience of a Roman Catholic politician. They are bound by religious constraints to help elevate the papacy to global supremacy, not just in this country, but around the world. He says to believe what you want to believe is the very essence of freedom. Okay, if you don't allow the Catholics freedom to take over the government, then they can't be free. You're denying them freedom. They have a moral and spiritual mandate to elevate the Pope to control over the government. And if you restrain that effort, in other words, if you're a Protestant, you have stripped them of their freedom. You've stripped the Pope of his freedom, his God-given freedom to govern all the peoples of the earth as the replacement of Christ. He says a government may have enormous power over its citizens, but as long as it cannot tell its citizens what to think, as many totalitarian countries have tried to do, its power will be limited. Religious liberty is called the quote-unquote first freedom, because civil liberties begin with freedom of conscience and freedom of worship. No wonder so many Catholic Americans were dismayed by the Obama administration's effort to force Catholic institutions to obey government health care laws contrary to Catholic teaching. The reason for dismay was not that the mandate ran counter to the tenets of the Catholic Church, but that it contradicted the core principle of American civil liberties. And if you believe what this author just told you, I got a bridge on the moon to sell you. Cheap. Roman Catholic institutions rebelled against Obama's health care plan because it violated the tenets of the Pope. Okay? And their cover is that they can say that it violated the liberty, the civil liberties of the country. That's how they can recruit Protestants to defend their Catholic position. It's not an attack on Roman Catholicism, per se. It's an attack on everybody's civil liberties. Obama attacked everybody's civil liberties. So you got all these people repeating this mantra that, you know, and I'm not saying one way or another about the Obama's health care. That's completely out of the point. I want you to comprehend the trickery in what this author's telling you. He's telling you it's not about that it offended the tenets of the Roman Catholic Church, but that it offended all of our civil liberties. Cockamamie! This is all about establishing Roman Catholicism as the religion of this country. It's all about making the civil laws of this land commensurate with Roman Catholic canon law and making us all Catholic, and doing it in the name of preserving our civil liberties. I mean, you can't get more twisted than this. And that's their whole business, twisting the truth out of contortion, out of proportion. They've made a science out of lying. They've made a science out of deception. They've made a science out of enslaving people and making them all subject to the Roman pontiff. He says, no wonder so many Catholic Americans were dismayed by the Obama administration's effort to force Catholic institutions to obey government health care laws contrary to Catholic teaching. The reason for dismay was not that the mandate ran counter to the tenets of the Catholic faith, but that it contradicted the core principle of American civil liberties. You know what my civil liberties are? To protest the Antichrist, to protest the whore of Rome, to protest the beast upon which she rides, the government of the United States and the governments of the world. That's my freedom of exercise of religion. Do you think I'm going to be able to hold on to that freedom much longer? When the whole world is oblivious to the subtleties, the Jesuit casuistries and sophistries whereby they've enslaved us all. How long do you think my religious liberties are going to be maintained in this country? And that I'm free to come on First Amendment Radio and denounce the papacy as the Antichrist of the Bible. How long do you think my liberties are going to be maintained? We've got but a short time to comprehend how Rome has enslaved us all through the government and has established Roman Catholicism as the religion of the state. Just like she's done throughout her entire history. This isn't anything new. This is standard ground floor Roman Catholicism, 1,800 years of experience with this. And you would think by now the world would wake up. But there's a blindness over the world that just cannot be penetrated. Why? Because you believe in a future Antichrist. That's why. You've left your Protestant beliefs. And you've also left the liberties that they won for you. You're getting exactly what you wanted. When you forgot that the papacy is, was, and always will be the Antichrist, as the Protestant reformers unanimously taught and believed in a single man that would come sometime before Christ returns, 7 years, 3.5 years, you can argue about that till the cows come home. But as long as you believe that, you can't believe. You just simply cannot believe the papacy is the Antichrist of the Bible. And that's why a Roman Catholic can write a book like this and it just sails right over the heads of the American people until somebody explains it to you. It sails right over your head. Because you can only think in terms of a future Antichrist. You can't think of a historical Antichrist. You've been indoctrinated all your life, just as I was. 50 years, constant barrage of futurism. It's a lie. It's a Jesuit lie. Roman Catholicism has always taught that the Pope's not the Antichrist. Why, don't be ridiculous. It must have been Nero or Caligula or Alexander the Great, for crying out loud. Or it could be a future individual we haven't seen yet, but it's not the Pope. I got a listener that wrote me an email this morning. Says, listen, I've been listening to you on First Amendment Radio, and a lot of what you say is consistent with my own research. That Martin Luther called the Pope the Antichrist. Do tell. Indeed, he did. And Lutherans today should still be calling the papacy the Antichrist. But they don't. What's the difference between the Lutherans today and the Martin Luther of the Protestant Reformation? Futurism. Has destroyed it. And that's why nothing that happens in the world today can make any sense to God's people, because they simply don't understand the root and cause of the New World Order. It's the Antichrist, the papacy. We'll be right back.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Inquisition Update. If you would like to support the program, please support First Amendment Radio, who pays the bills. And if you'd like to contact me, please do so by email. My email address is tom@seawaves.us. tom@seawaves.us. Now, what about the religious liberty of Americans? Roman Catholics all over this country protested the Obamacare because it made federal taxation to support abortion. That goes against the tenets of the Roman Catholic Church. Goes against my tenets too, but they're biblical tenets, not Roman Catholic tenets. But Rome had all the voice, had all the press, completely controlled the press, demanding that Roman Catholics not be taxed to support a health care program that financed abortion. Okay? All well and good. They've got religious freedom. What about my religious freedom? What about taxing me my entire nearly 60 years of life to finance papal proxy wars all over the world to help conquer not only the nations that were liberated at the Protestant Reformation, but to enslave every nation that has never heretofore bent the knee to the papacy? You know, Rome just gets such a wonderful reputation among quote-unquote Christians because they want to save the lives of babies Oh, that pulls at the heartstrings. I mean, you can't be against the Roman Catholic Church when they protest abortion, can you? Well, where is the protest when they see no sin whatsoever? As a matter of fact, Roman Catholic canon law deems it a meritorious work to kill a heretic, and that every one of our wars are simply crusades against heretics around the world. Heretics as defined by the Roman Catholic Church. Roman Catholics don't want to be taxed to have to pay for health care institutions that offer abortion. I don't wish to be taxed to finance the killing of innocent people, men, women, and children all over the world. And I've not pulled one heartstring, have I? You see how blind we are? We can all sympathize with the Catholics that don't want to finance abortion. But nobody has a thing to say about financing mass murder all over the world. We've lost it. No moral compass whatsoever in the world. Why? We forgot who the Antichrist is. Because we believed in Futurism. I'm not going to say it again. I've said it so many times during the readings of this book, it must have sunk in by now, or it never will. Give up your Futurism. You're blind if you believe in Futurism. You can't understand current events, much less history, if you're a futurist. The only way to make rhyme or reason out of history, the only way to fully comprehend the Bible and what it teaches, is historicism. Historicism teaches the Protestant lesson. It's the papacy. It's always been the papacy. It ever will be the papacy. The man of sin, the son of perdition, is the papacy. The Antichrist is the papacy. And there isn't even another candidate. And there won't be another candidate even in the future. And when you wrap your brain around that and confirm it in history, as I have been doing for nearly 15 years, I think. I don't keep a diary, but I've confirmed it in history. Now history makes sense to me. He says a proponent of Obamacare might argue that abridging the rights of Catholic institutions is justified by the national health benefits the new plan promises to offer, but even people who sincerely believe that should worry about such a bargain. Consider again the words of Benjamin Franklin, quote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Now they've linked the freedom of Roman Catholicism to safety. Nothing new about that, is there? Not if you understand history. There will be no peace until the Prince of Peace comes. And that means as long as there is any challenge in the world to the counterfeit Prince of Peace, there's going to be war. And the Bible confirms, we can take it to the bank, there's going to be war, and the only reason there's going to be war is nobody protests Rome's control of our government. If the Protestants would stand up and say, no more war, we've figured it out, we're not going along with your New World Order, we're returning to the Protestant Reformation, we're going to be liberators, not enslavers. We're not going to fight any more of your papal proxy wars. We're not going to finance any more of your papal proxy wars. And if the Pope wants to conquer the world, let him and his Jesuits and his Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, arm up, saddle up, and go over there and do their bloody bidding, just like they used to do in the old world order. We're not going to provide cover for the man of sin, the son of perdition, anymore. Let him bleed and die like the rest of us have for nearly 1,800 years. Let the Pope fight his own damn wars, his own damnable wars. We're not going to fight them, and we're not going to pay for them. That's a Protestant speaking there. That's a Protestant, and you don't hear any of them anymore. You want to worship the beast, and you act like a beast. A murdering beast that has no respect for life, whether it be an infant child in the womb or whether it be a doddering old man. That's Roman Catholicism. I'll not be a part of it anymore. And I'm not going to play nice with these papists anymore. Religious freedom, my eye. From the very foundation, the Roman Catholic Church was built on tyranny. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. You gave up your liberty when you gave up Protestantism. You deserve no safety, and there's not going to be any for you. Is that hard enough? Does that sink in? You gave up your Protestant liberty for a little safety, and you're not going to have either. And worse than that, you are now in opposition to the greatest power in all the universe, Christ himself. You have become an enemy of Christ when you gave up your Protestantism. Does that sink in? It's the truth. You comprehend that when the Jews who had been liberated by Christ from Pharaoh's Egypt, having been sheltered by the Shekinah glory and fed from heaven manna, turned around and wanted to go back to Egypt, they became the enemy of Christ. And that's exactly what Futurism has done to you, made you an enemy of your own Messiah. And a friend of Antichrist, a slave to Antichrist, a bleeding, dying, fighting, paying slave of Antichrist. My entire life's wealth has been bled away from me to finance the papacy's atrocities all over the world. And I'm not allowed to protest because it's just not the Christian thing to do. What has happened to Christianity? Does it even exist? It's quite obvious popery exists. I don't think, I just don't think this is making it. I just don't think people comprehend it. He says, no one understood better the roles of faith and freedom in America than Alexis de Tocqueville, a French writer who visited in 1831. Quote, upon my arrival in the United States, the religious aspect of the country was the first thing that struck my attention, wrote de Tocqueville in his work called The Democracy of America. Quote, and the longer I stayed there, the more I perceived the great political consequences resulting from this new state of things, unquote. Tocqueville was struck by the way Americans' religion was directly related to their remarkable civil life. Quote, in France, I had almost always seen the spirit of religion and the spirit of freedom pursuing courses diametrically opposed to each other. But in America, I found that they were intimately united and that they reigned in common over the same country. Unquote. You know what the difference between what de Tocqueville saw in France and what he saw in America? France wanted to liberate itself from the papacy. France, because of papal tyranny, because of Jesuit influence and troublemaking in France, they wanted to get rid of religion altogether. They wanted to cast off the bonds of Christ forever. They were sick and tired of Christianity because the only Christianity they knew was Romanism. And they hated religion so much because of Jesuit casuistry and sophistry and infiltrating the government and trying to provoke wars within the country that they turned to human reason for help. What's different in America? Why did de Tocqueville see all these things aimed in the same direction, both religion and government? Because Rome controlled it all, and we excused it under the name of freedom of religion. The government was consistent with, there was no opposition against Rome as there was in France. It was a harmonious coexistence, government and church. The Jesuits have never changed. They've never done anything different in the United States they didn't do anywhere else. They got control of the government, but there was no protest. You see, there was in France. There was a protest in France. France demanded that the king or the parliament kick the Jesuits out, that they kick the Pope out. Never has been the case in the United States of America. Why? Because there's very little, if any, Protestantism. Never has been. Not with a voice. So we have this comparative success story to tell to France. And it's no success at all. De Tocqueville was amazed at what he saw in this country. Why? Because there was no conflict like there was in France. No protest. He says that unique collaboration of faith and freedom has defined America. As freedom has allowed individual Americans to achieve prosperity, the moral vision imparted by faith has endowed the nation with a, quote, collective calling, unquote. Those are my quotes. Listen to the words. With a collective calling greater than any material wealth. You know why your material wealth is leaving the country? Because you're under a greater collective calling. Your material wealth in this country is being replaced with a religious collective, a religious commune. And it's been defined in recent papal encyclicals. Caritas in Veritate, Unum Sanctum, or rather, the name escapes me right at the moment. We're coming under a prior social mortgage. It's going to be a religious collective. You're not going to be able to call yourself separate anymore. You're going to be driven to poverty, and you're going to have only the government to help you. And the government is Roman Catholic. That's where the collective comes from. Government collective. It's going to be faith-based. It's going to be Roman Catholic. Says that unique collaboration of faith and freedom has defined America. As freedom has allowed individual Americans to achieve prosperity, the moral vision imparted by faith, that is by Roman Catholicism, has endowed the nation with a, quote, collective calling, unquote, greater than any material wealth. I mean, you would gladly give up all your material wealth for this Catholic collective that they're establishing here in the United States. If you had any brains at all, according to this author, you would gladly exchange your material blessings for a collective. You would exchange your freedom for a religious collective, a Roman Catholic collective. He says this has made America a powerful adversary against dictators and zealots. America is a powerful adversary against dictators and zealots? What's the papacy but a dictator and a zealot, a global dictator and a global zealot? The United States might pat itself on the back for going down and chasing Manuel Noriega out of a Roman Catholic convent and putting him in prison. They might pat themselves on the back for destroying Saddam Hussein and his government. And they might pat themselves on the back for destroying Mahmoud, what's his name down in Egypt, or Libya, rather, Gaddafi. But they've never lifted a finger against the Pope. He's the tyrant of tyrants, the zealot of zealots. And all these other tyrants were just competitors of the Pope. That's why we destroyed them. And you paid for it with your blood and your guts and your money. So did I. He says this has made America a powerful adversary against dictators and zealots, and a nation that continually rights itself when it veers off track. I'm still waiting for the United States that veered itself off track at Vatican Council II to right itself. To repudiate Vatican Council II. To say, we're not separated brethren, we're not brethren at all. We oppose you morning, noon, and night. We oppose you till the cows come home. You and your Jesuits and your Knights of Malta, your Knights of Columbus, your Freemasons, the whole kit and caboodle, we oppose you night and day. And we make our alignment with Christ and Him only from now on. We are against the global dictator and the global zealot, the papacy, the man of sin, the son of perdition, and we will not submit to his canon law. That's how this country should right itself when it veered off course at Vatican Council II. He says, what does any of this have to do with international relations in the 21st century? A great deal, says the author, actually, because the future of international relations will be determined in large part by the values, that is, the Roman Catholic values, that drive nations, including the United States, toward their individual and collective destinies. Your destiny is determined by the Pope, by the papacy, and how well you take part in your efforts in the direction of this global collective that they're creating. He says, as I've tried to show in these pages, and as recent history has demonstrated, religion is not incidental to the practicalities of geopolitics. On the contrary, it is often decisive. Religion is decisive. It's not incidental. It is decisive. Roman Catholicism is decisive to the practicalities of geopolitics, global politics. It's another admission that the Roman Catholic Church controls politics. He says, so we, like the Pope, must take note of current trends of religious faith in the world, and like the Pope, we should be concerned. we should have the same concerns as the Pope. That's what he just told you. If you're going to be a part of this global collective, you must have the same concerns of the Pope, because he runs it lock, stock, and barrel. Now, what about all you guys out there who think your salvation is in Republican politics? The saving of this country is dependent upon Republican, conservative politics. And what about all you out there likewise who believe that the salvation of this nation depends on the success of democratic or liberal politics? Do you know you both serve the same agenda? Tick, tock, tick, tock. First left, then right, left, then right. The grandfather clock, the godfather clock, the papal clock keeps ticking away, and it would stop ticking if you quit pushing left and right, left and right. You are the very engine that fuels this papal New World Order. And as long as you remain deluded that Democratic politics and Republican politics are any help to anybody, you will just keep advancing the papal clock, because they both are controlled by Catholics, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And every time the pendulum swings left or right, you will lose more rights, you will be more tyrannized, you will be more ignorant, you will be more lied to than before. Is it making sense? How many people have you said, you know, it just doesn't seem to matter who we vote for, Republican or Democrat? We lose liberties. We pay higher taxes. We fight more wars. It's designed that way. The very thing that you look to for hope is the very mechanism by which you are enslaved. Well, Tom, what do we do then? No politics? Return to the Protestant Reformation. Return to the reality that the papacy is, was, and always will be the Antichrist of the Bible. It is the papacy that has deceived the whole world, has controlled all the governments of the world, has enslaved us all, and is sitting on the throne of thrones in this world, ready to be worshipped by every man, woman, and child. Return to Christ and Protestantism. I'll be back tomorrow.